Hello, people. So, welcome to our discussion. The topic is going to be the post Enlightenment concept of childhood and the negotiations between European children's literature and Bengali children's literature during the 19th and 20th century. First of all, before beginning, I would like to thank Ramanujan College for inviting me to deliver these sessions. This is the first time that I'll be doing something like this, and it's going to be a learning process for me as well. And I just hope that in the course of these lectures, I will be able to make some sense. I'll be able to make you people learn something worthwhile. I have divided my discussion into three sessions, three modules, let's say. And during my first lecture, I will be going through the Enlightenment and the various philosophical theories related to the Enlightenment and how it led to the invention of a new concept of childhood, which in its wake led to the eventual rise of European children's literature. And by European children's literature, I predominantly mean British English children's literature, because English children's literature is something which we will increasingly engage ourselves with in course of this discussion. Um, and how this children's literature also experienced a change, let's say, during the later half of the 19th century, during the Victorian period, let's say the later half of the Victorian period. So, without much ado, I will begin my discussion. I begin with the Enlightenment and several famous names associated with the Enlightenment. Scholars like John Locke, scholars like Thomas Hobbes, the thinkers, and we will engage ourselves with John Locke. It is his theories which we will be discussing here. Uh, and we will talk about his book Essay Concerning Human Understanding, a very important work where he put forward the theory of tabula rasa. Now, what does tabula rasa mean? In Latin, tabula rasa means a blank slate. And what did Locke say in his tabula rasa theory? He said that when a human being is being born, the human being's brain is completely empty. It is like a blank slate. It has neither good feelings, it has neither bad feelings in it. And that was, of course, something revolutionary to say, which I would request you to consider, because in saying so, Locke was also going diametrically opposite the theory of traditional Christianity during the medieval times, which believed in something called original sin. Now, what is original sin? Original sin, they believed, is that disobedience, that act of disobedience, a man's first disobedience committed by Eve when she tasted the fruit in the tree of knowledge, and then of course Adam followed suit, and because of that primal sin, the medieval Christians believed that a hangover, a residue of that sin remained in every human being, right from the time when the human being is born. So when a baby is born, the baby is carrying within him or her that seed of original sin. And as a result, they always believed that the child should be treated with an iron hand of discipline. Otherwise, the child can go awry. The child has a tendency to disobey people, to turn bad, and that comes from that residual original sin in them. So, if we look at the medieval tradition of instructing the child, the medieval theories of education, we will see that they believed in penalization, and proverbs like spare the rod and spoil the child, they became popular during that period. And it was not only that during the medieval period these ideas were popular, but they also followed, uh, they also remained popular well into the 19th century. I mean, the conservative Christians, they kept on believing in this theory. So if you read a Victorian novel like Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, you will see that in Jane Eyre, somebody like Mr. Brocklehurst, if anyone believes in this theory that a child carries within itself the seed of original sin, so he always keeps on telling that Jane Eyre is evil, little Jane is evil. And also Mrs. Reed, the way she treats young Jane, she lets her go without her meals, traps her in a small room, penalizes her, let's say. Uh, that very much tells us that Mrs. Reed is also somebody who believes in this theory that a child can be evil, this traditional Christian medieval theory. So John Locke's sayings were going completely against those beliefs, and he was saying that the child knows absolutely nothing. The child's mind is actually like a blank slate. It has neither good feelings, neither bad feelings in its mind. And thus you will see this idea is gradually leading to the rise of a new theory of childhood, a new idea of the innocent child, because the idea of a child being innocent, the child knowing nothing, actually comes from this kind of a theory, the child's mind being a blank slate. Then after John Locke says this, after the Enlightenment, during the later half of the 18th century and the early part of the 19th century, the Romantic period, you see there is a new idea of childhood coming in. It is termed as the romantic idea of the innocent child. The cult of the innocent child is growing. Is growing. It's becoming popular, and the idea of the innocent child is seen in a number of writers in their works during this period. Somebody like William Blake, he's writing a whole book named The Book of Innocence. And the children shown there are these kind of paragon of innocence. That the child in the poem, The Lamb, he is being equated with the lamb, who is a symbol of purity, a symbol of innocence, and of course with Jesus Christ himself, the ultimate innocent being. And then again, there is Holy Thursday and the Echoing Green, and in all these poems, what is William Blake doing? He's showing innocent children, right? And then again, William Wordsworth's poem, The Immortality Ode, where he says that when I was born with trailing clouds of glory. I was so pure, it's almost divine. And as I have grown up, I have become increasingly sinful. So you have these ideas of innocence being doubled with by writers during this period. And then there is also another thing which Locke is doing. Locke's theory also has another angle where he emphasizes on the importance of empirical knowledge. What does he say? He says that, and here again he is going against the medieval dictum that knowledge can be received from the forefathers, let's say. Locke is saying that true knowledge is consisted of our sensory perceptions. Sensory perceptions, the five sense organs, our eyes, our nose, our tongue, our ear, and our skin. Uh, it is only these organs which get various sensations, and it is these sensory experiences which ultimately form the basis of true knowledge. So what is Locke actually saying? He's saying that any knowledge which is not tested by our senses is not true knowledge. And I may just add here that this kind of an idea is also laying the foundation of scientific thinking, right? Because that is what scientific thinking tells you. Do not believe anything until and unless you judge it by your senses. What does a scientific experiment do? It has three sections, right? The experiment, and after conducting the experience, the experiment, what are you doing? You are observing. And what is observation other than sensory perceptions? And it is only after observing with your sensory perceptions that you are arriving at the inference or the decision that yes, this is this. So Locke is saying that it is only these sensory perceptions which form the basis of true knowledge. Any other knowledge is disputable. Now, what does that actually mean? It also means, let me tell you, that every person's idea of the world will eventually become something different, because all of us do not have the same sensory perceptions, right? For example, let's say somebody like Mukesh Ambani's son, and then a very poor boy who is growing up in the slum of Dharavi. let's say. Will they have the same sensory perceptions? No. Mukesh Ambani's son will see, hear, taste, even touch different things other than the things seen or heard or touched by the boy at Dharavi. Their sensory experiences will be different. And as a result, uh, they will develop different ideas of the world. I hope you are getting what I am saying. Mukesh Ambani's son will see beautiful things. He will hear polite words. While the boy at Dharavi, he will see let's say not so good things. He will grow up hearing to abuse and such things. So his idea of the world will be a different one because his sensory experiences are different. So that is also something which Locke's theory leads to. I mean, our sensory experiences are different, so they will eventually build up our idea of the world, which will be something different. So that is how you have everyone's idea of the world becoming something different. This leads to the rise of individualism during this period. And that is, of course, another story how the rise in individualism is leading to the rise in the novel, which is the story of the individuals like Robinson Crusoe, Moll Flanders, Pamela Andrews. But here, what I would like to say is that this kind of an idea also puts an increased emphasis on education. Now, why? Because you find William Godwin during this period writing a tract on education and emphasizing on the need for proper education of children, because educators are actually the people who can actually regulate the sensory experiences. Uh, experienced by a child, let's say. It's actually the educator. It may be the father and mother, it may be the teacher who can actually regulate what a child watches, what a child hears, what a child even smells, tastes. So that is why the educator has a larger responsibility. It is he or she who can regulate what a child experiences by its senses. And as a result, what a child knows about the world, the educator can actually regulate, can actually influence, control the child's idea of the world by controlling the child's sensory experiences. So that is why the educator becomes a very important figure. And you see William Godwin writing this tract on education. You see, and that is why the educator will have to be patient, not like the medieval educators who used techniques of torture, let's say of cruelty. They penalize the children. The educator will have to be patient because he has an added responsibility, uh, which we are realizing. Uh, so you see these kind of things being talked about in that period's literature. You see Rousseau writing Emile, which treats with this issue of education. You see Mary Shelley, William Godwin's daughter, uh, during the early part of the 19th century, she's writing Frankenstein, and there Victor Frankenstein says that my parents did not penalize me while teaching. They taught me with care, with love, unlike the parents of my friends. And Victor is definitely highly educated, right? But again, I would like to draw your attention to something here. Frankenstein, the novel, in a way, can also be read as a novel that deals with education and warns people what bad education can lead to. I would argue that Frankenstein shows us no less than three figures who are ultimately failures in their lives, and the reason of their failure is somehow connected to their faulty education. The first character is, of course, Robert Walton. Walton, in his letters, says that I'm not properly educated because I was brought up with my uncle and I only had his library. There was no one to guide me what to read, what to learn. I read whatever I felt like reading, and as a result, my education has been incomplete. I know in some things I'm an expert, but there are some essential things in life which I absolutely know almost nothing about. And ultimately, you will see that Robert Walton is failing in his life. I mean, when he cannot complete his expedition, and when uh, the people are revolting, the voyagers, Robert Walton has no fitting reply for them, though he is the leader, right? It is Victor Frankenstein who is actually placating the mutinous voyagers, let's say. So Robert Walton is developing an admiration for Victor here. He's saying that if only I had somebody like Victor Frankenstein to guide me when I was a young chap. But here comes the question: is Victor Frankenstein properly educated? Is he someone who has had a perfect education? I don't think so, friends, because you will see there is a certain stage in the novel when Victor is reading, he's developing an interest for people who dabbled in alchemy, people like Cornelius Agrippa, people like Paracelsus and Albertus Magnus, uh, and he is reading their works. And that is when Victor's father comes and snatches away the book from his hands and tells him, do not read these things because alchemy is absolute rubbish. But Victor's father is also committing a mistake here. He's not telling Victor why he should not read books on alchemy, why alchemy is not a proper science. He's not explaining Victor why Victor should not read those works. Uh, he's just scolding Victor and taking the book out of his hand and throwing it away, saying that it's trash. And what does happen here? Victor, obviously, he feels inquisitive. He keeps on asking in his mind, why does my father not let me read this? So I will read precisely these. So he keeps on secretly reading these works, develops an absolute passion for alchemy, and thereby he develops this idea of reviving the dead, which ultimately leads to his disaster, right? His life gets absolutely destroyed in pursuit of this experiment. So maybe the seed of discord lay in Victor's father's not explaining to him properly, not guiding him properly as to why he should not read alchemy. Uh, and then, of course, there is a creature created by Victor Frankenstein. The creature, of course, suffers a lot. I mean, he has absolutely no educator, no proper guardian. Victor, who is supposed to be his guardian, he runs away as soon as Victor lays eyes on the creature. He says that it's a monster. And as a result, the creature has no proper education, has no proper guidance. There are only 3 or 4 books which he reads, absolutely random pickings, which he stumbles onto. Goethe's Sorrows of Werther, Plutarch's Lives, and Milton's Paradise Lost. So he has also had a very, let's say, haphazard education, no proper education. And he also, I mean, his life is also a disaster, right? I mean, his life comes to nothing. Uh, so maybe Mary Shelley is here also trying to pass this message that if you do not have proper education, your life can be a disaster. A lack of proper education is also something which Mary Shelley is trying to show in Frankenstein. The novel can also be read in this manner. So much for education and the emphasis on education, and this is actually what led to the rise in children's literature, because writing books for children is also an entertaining way, a unique way to instruct them, right? So that is how the idea came, and you find early works of children's literature during the 18th century, works like John Newbery's Pocket Book, works like Goody Two Shoes, works like Hannah More and Sarah Moore's Cheap Repository, and their publications. So all these books, they are very didactic in nature, because that is a primary idea behind producing children's books, right? Books for children is a unique way of instructing them, of telling them how to do things and all. So you find these books to be very didactic, very full of instructions, these early works of children's literature. But then that is how early children's literature was in Europe and in England. And the cult of the innocent child, let me tell you, it followed well into the Victorian period. I mean, when you find a writer like Charles Dickens, of course, when he is writing, several of his novels feature children, right? And Charles Dickens is still following the model of the innocent child, let's say. For example, a novel like Oliver Twist. I mean, Oliver is so innocent, right? He stumbles upon Artful Dodger. He goes into the den of Fagin, and he still cannot realize that it is actually a place where young pickpockets are trained. I mean, he sees those wallets hanging, but he still cannot figure that out. He's so innocent. And when Artful Dodger is telling him that please pick that man's pocket, you are getting a very good opportunity, Oliver does not realize what Artful Dodger is telling him to do. He's so confused. He's like, what? Is he telling me to commit a crime? I mean, how preposterous, how disastrous. I mean, he's so innocent, my God, impossibly innocent. So you will find other figures like that. Little Nell in the Old Curiosity Shop. They are so innocent. And But it is this cult of the innocent child which is also getting challenged during the later half of the Victorian period. I mean, for the first time, uh, by Lewis Carroll, someone like Lewis Carroll and his books, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in 1865 and Alice Through the Looking Glass in 1871, where his child protagonist, Alice, is going to fictional worlds. What are actually Wonderland and Looking Glass Land? They are actually the real Victorian world, the world around the child. And what do you see there? The characters. Who are they actually? People like the White Queen, the Red Queen, the Talking Flowers, the mutton leg piece, the tortoise. Who are they actually? They are people who are real life adults, exaggerated representations of real life adults who try to dominate the child. And they are also trying to dominate Alice, are they not? Uh, they scold Alice, the flowers tell Alice that you look like such a dumb girl. Please keep quiet. And even the the piece of mutton tries to instruct Alice. The queen scold Alice. And what is Alice doing here? Not like the Dickensian innocent child who remains passive, timid, dominated. Alice asserts her own identity. She speaks out. At times, she lashes against those creatures who try to dominate her. And at the end of Through the Looking Glass, what does she say? She says that I know this is a dream, and I will not let you people instruct me, dominate me. They want her to be a queen in Looking Glass, because to be a queen is like the paragon of accepted femininity, right? And Alice revolts. She's like, I won't be a queen. I know this is all a dream. Stop, you people. She cries out, and the dream breaks. It disrupts. So, what is Alice actually doing here? She's asserting her identity. She's asserting her own voice, let's say. So, you have these kind of figures, these kind of children who are asserting their identity. They are much more plucky, let's say. They are not only innocent. I mean, Hugh Cunningham and other critics have said that Victorian children's literature always shows the innocent child. But here you see that someone like Lewis Carroll is actually deviating from that stereotype. And then again, you have a lot of writers towards the end of the Victorian period who are doing precisely this. For example, someone like Robert Louis Stevenson in his Treasure Island, Jim Hawkins, the boy protagonist. He is also asserting his own identity. I mean, he is going with the adults on the adventure aboard the Hispaniola ship. Uh, Adults like Squire Trelawney, Dr. Livesey, but he writes his own fate, right? He calls his own shots. He hoodwinks dangerous pirates like Long John Silver and Israel Hands, and he runs off to the island alone, roams about the island, and becomes friends with Ben Gunn. And then when the adults actually fight back, the counter-attack against the pirates, when it does happen, you find that it is not the adults, it is Jim who is leading the adults. I mean, the adults are saying that, Jim, you show us the way. So he is being the pioneer here. In spite of being a boy, he's not being dominated by the adults. He is asserting his own identity. He is directing the adult adventurers here. And you also find other writers during this period, writers like G.A. Henty and his boy heroes. G.A. Henty's book In Times of Peril, where he shows two boys, Ned and Dick, British boys. They are being caught in the time of the Sepoy Mutiny, and they free themselves out of various hazardous situations. And then you have somebody like R.M. Ballantyne. Of course, I'll be talking about adventure fiction later in a much larger scope. But here, what I'm trying to say is the way they are putting these plucky boys and girls forward. So that is definitely a change from that innocent child stereotype. Even in Valentine's Coral Island, you find these boys. Uh, and then, of course, Robert Louis Stevenson's Kidnap has another boy, David Balfour. So they are pretty much asserting their own identity. They're not getting dominated by the adults, let's say. Adults who are always telling them what to do, who are always trying to guide them and fashion their personality according to their will. So these children are not doing that. So that is definitely a development, an important development, let's say. So that's kind of everything I had to cover in my first segment. That was what was happening here. And of course, there was the school story, which was also being written. I will, of course, talk about the school story in my later lectures, in the later sessions. The school stories like Thomas Hughes' Tom Brown's School Days, and you have Dickens's novels also dealing with episodes in school, like David Copperfield deals with the boarding school at one point of the novel, and how does the school experience leads to the development of the child's personality. So these things are also being written. So that's pretty much all I had to say in the first session. Now, what will I be doing in the next lecture? In the next lecture, we'll be seeing how these ideas of the Enlightenment, the post-Enlightenment concept of childhood, and the idea of children's literature, the need for children's literature, how did all these ideas influence Bengal? I mean, why am I taking Bengal as the point of discussion here? Because Bengal, of course, was the place where English education first left a mark, right? I mean, Bengal was the place where the English first had the taste of political power, let's say administrative power. And that was actually the place where a new class of English educated Indians came into being, the Babu class. And it is they who became acquainted with European literature, European philosophy, and they were also getting acquainted with the ideas of the Enlightenment, and they were also reading these works of children's literature. And it is they who we will see are gradually developing an idea, are gradually getting influenced by these new ideas of childhood. They are also feeling the need of a new children's literature for Bengal. And there is a certain change coming in their outlook. And how are they getting influenced by these ideas? And what are they doing when they are writing a new Bengali children's literature, let's say? How are they engaging with the English works? Is it a plain imitation, or is it a kind of negotiation? We will see that it's a pretty complicated negotiation, because as Franz Fanon tells us, the colonized never blindly imitates the colonizer. After a point, he stops doing that. He realizes that this blind imitation is leading nowhere. So that's where the complicated negotiation begins. And after all, the Bengalis were the ruled, right? The colonized, and the English were the colonizers. So here also we will see how these complicated negotiations were happening between the ruled people's discourse, let's say, the Bengali children's literature, and the rulers' discourse, the English children's literature. So all these things are going to be discussed in the next session. So much for the first session. I hope I have made some sense. Thank you for listening to me. Have a nice day, people. Thank you.